Hello and welcome to the Gripe TV. I'm your host, JP Forte. Now, just before Christmas, those of us that work in wolf rescue and wolf advocacy won a huge victory for wolves. A federal court ordered for wolves in the Great Lakes region to be relisted under the Endangered Species Act and to be protected once again. And while that is a huge and awesome victory for us, we still must remain vigilant. I really have a fear and a worry that the assholes in Congress and the Senate are going to pull the same shit with us with wolves in the Great Lakes region like what they did with us with wolves in the Northern Rockies region. What they're probably going to do is create some form of legislation making wolves in the Great Lakes region exempt from the Endangered Species Act, and then include a clause in that legislation barring and blocking anyone from being able to challenge the government on the issue in the courts. And basically what that does is it takes away people's rights, and it also violates a part of the Constitution that has to do with the separation of powers between the three branches of government. In the case of the wolves in the Northern Rockies, the only way that those wolves will ever get protected again, the only way that the killing and the slaughter of those wolves will ever stop, and the only way that those wolves will be saved before they're completely wiped out, is for everyone to get together and demand that the budget bill rider that Congress passed in 2011 that made those wolves exempt from the Endangered Species Act and blocked anyone from being able to challenge the issue judicially in the courts be repealed. Basically, that budget bill rider needs to be repealed. And if they got any ideas of having legislation done the same way with the wolves in the Great Lakes region, that needs to be stopped. Basically, what we all need to do is we need to get together and demand a repeal of the legislation that made wolves in the Northern Rockies exempt from the Endangered Species Act protections and blocked anyone from being able to challenge the government on the issue judicially. And then at the same time, demand that the government never pull another move like that again. Because regardless of how you feel about wolves, what they did with that legislation clearly violates people's rights. It basically stripped people of their constitutional right to challenge the government in the courts. And it creates a dangerous situation. Because if the government is allowed to get away with writing legislation and creating laws that blocks the public from being able to challenge the government in the courts on wildlife issues, the government won't stop there. Basically, what the government will do anytime that people challenge the government on any other kind of issue in the courts, and the government doesn't like the outcome of the ruling, then all they'll have to do is create legislation forcing through the agenda they want and include the clause blocking the public from being able to challenge the government on that issue judicially. So basically what will happen is people will eventually lose all their rights when it comes to challenging the government in the courts on different issues. This is why getting that budget bill rider that delisted wolves in the Northern Rockies repealed, and why preventing any other form of legislation pertaining to wolves or any other wildlife issue, preventing the government from making any kind of legislation that blocks the public from being able to challenge it, is so important. Because the issue here, it's not just about the wolves anymore. It's about our constitutional rights and our freedom as Americans. And the time to stand up is now. We really need to stand up, and we really need to put a stop to this whole thing now before it gets out of hand.